She tugged on his sleeve in the hotel lobby and whispered, "Are you my daddy?" And the billionaire CEO's entire world shattered in one heartbeat. The lobby of the Eden Crest Hotel was the kind of place designed to make people feel small. Marble, floors that gleamed like still water, vaulted ceilings lined with golden inlays, and glass chandeliers that looked like frozen explosions of light. Everything sparkled, everything whispered wealth and power, and yet for once Lucas Crawford, 30 years old and worth billions, felt like a shadow within it. He sat alone in one of the oversized leather armchairs near the central fountain, back straight but eyes distant, as if the weight of the world had quietly crept onto his shoulders. Dressed in a crisp light shirt and dark trousers, with a watch worth more than most people's annual salary on his wrist, Lucas looked every bit the image of success. But there was something hollow behind his sharp brown eyes, something no suit could hide. He wasn't waiting for a meeting, not a press call, not a date, just silence, stillness, a rare moment without obligations, and yet even in stillness, he felt exhausted. There had been too much lately. Too many cameras, too many headlines, too many people talking about him and not to him. The public collapse of his marriage had been dragged across tabloids for weeks. Then came the whispers about his emotional detachment, his corporate ruthlessness, the ice in his veins. Somewhere in the noise, he stopped recognizing the version of himself that people talked about. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, watching the water ripple in the fountain. Something about it calmed him. It didn't care who he was. That's when he heard the voice. It was soft, curious, completely unfiltered. "Are you my daddy?" Lucas turned his head sharply, startled. Standing a few steps away was a little girl, no more than 5 years old, in a bright yellow dress with a ruffled collar and matching hairband. Her dark brown curls fell loosely around her shoulders, and her wide eyes, the same rich brown as his, were fixed on him with quiet certainty. He blinked, stunned. "I'm sorry." "What?" She took a step closer, holding a small cookie in her hand. "Are you my daddy?" Lucas sat back slightly at a loss for words. His heart kicked in his chest like it had forgotten how to beat properly. He looked around quickly, as if expecting a camera crew or some kind of prank setup. But there was nothing, just her, and something in her face, in her posture, made it impossible to dismiss her question as childish confusion. "What's your name?" he asked carefully. "Sophie," she said, matter of fact. "Mommy showed me your picture once. You look the same, except maybe more tired." He almost choked on a laugh. It caught in his throat, somewhere between disbelief and sheer panic. "I think you're my daddy," she continued, lifting the cookie toward him. "But even if you're not, you look like you need this." He hesitated, then took the cookie gently from her tiny hand. It was slightly warm and smelled like cinnamon. The absurdity of the moment made his head spin. "Thank you," he murmured. She gave him a proud nod, then stood silently, watching him with far too much calm for someone so small. He studied her features, the delicate curve of her nose, the arch of her brow, the way her chin tilted slightly to the right when she was thinking. A strange ache spread through his chest. "Where's your mom?" he asked quietly. Sophie turned and pointed across the lobby. And when Lucas followed her gaze, the world tilted. There, standing near the large glass wall that overlooked the city, was Mia Garcia. He hadn't seen her in 6 years. Not since Lisbon. Not since that one night that felt too real to be forgotten and too fleeting to become anything. He remembered her laughter, her fire, the way she looked at him like she could see through all the noise. They'd lost touch. Or maybe he had let her go, distracted by his rising empire. She was standing there now, still beautiful, still fierce, still watching, but this time, with a secret she'd never told him, and a child who had just offered him a cookie, and the question that would unravel everything he thought he knew. Lucas couldn't move. For a full 5 seconds, he just stared across the vast marble floor, locked onto the figure of Mia Garcia. She hadn't aged so much as she had sharpened, her features more defined, her posture more grounded, her presence unmistakable. She wore a fitted green dress that brushed just below her knees and moved with the same quiet confidence he remembered from 6 years ago. But now, that confidence was laced with something heavier. Experience, protection, a kind of stillness born from carrying too much alone for too long. Their eyes met. He felt it like a jolt through his chest. For a moment, the noise of the lobby, the murmurs of check-ins, the distant ring of phones, the soft splash of the fountain, faded into complete silence. She didn't smile, didn't wave. She only looked at him, and he saw it there. Recognition, hesitation, and something harder to name. Maybe fear, maybe forgiveness, maybe both. Then slowly, Mia began walking toward them. Lucas's heart pounded with each step she took. Sophie, meanwhile, had turned around and was completely unfazed by the moment. She was humming quietly to herself and watching the fountain bubble while nibbling on a second cookie from her pocket. She was 5, and the world was still simple, at least for now. When Mia reached them, she stopped just short of Lucas. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes were not. He stood. It felt clumsy. He was usually so composed, so sure of his words. Now he felt like a man whose feet didn't quite touch the ground. "Mia," he said, breath catching in his throat. "Hello, Lucas," she replied calmly, though her voice was softer than he expected. "It's been a while." "6 years," he said. "Lisbon." She nodded once. His eyes darted briefly to Sophie, who was now kneeling on the floor, rearranging the napkins on the coffee table like puzzle pieces. "Is she?" Mia's lips parted slightly, then pressed together again. There was no anger in her face, only honesty. "Yes," she said. It was like the air was knocked from his lungs. He looked down again at the child, his daughter, and then back at Mia. "I didn't know," he said. "God, I didn't know." "I know," Mia said simply. "I tried to tell you. Once, after I found out, I sent an email. No reply. You were already in London, building empires. I figured you'd moved on. So I did too. Or I tried to." Lucas felt the memory rush back like a fog. He'd seen that email. He remembered the subject line. "You should know." He hadn't even opened it. He'd been on a plane, in meetings, in motion. He told himself he'd read it later. Later never came. "I didn't ignore you on purpose," he said, his voice low. I was stupid. Busy. Selfish. Pick one." Mia looked at him for a long moment. Then, to his surprise, she gave a slight shrug. "I wasn't going to chase you, Lucas. You made your choice. I made mine. I focused on her." He nodded slowly, shame crawling up the back of his neck. "She's amazing," he said. "She is," Mia replied, pride slipping into her voice. "Smart, brave, funny and curious. So curious. She walked up to me and just asked. That sounds like her." Lucas sat down again, his legs suddenly unsteady. Mia sat beside him, leaving a careful space between them. Sophie sat across from them on the floor, talking to a small plush giraffe she'd pulled from her backpack. "You didn't tell her who I was?" he asked. "Number not exactly," Mia said. "I told her her father was someone I cared about once. Someone kind but far away. She's asked about you more lately. Maybe it's her age. Maybe it's just time." Lucas was quiet. The weight of missed birthdays, first steps, and bedtime stories sat heavy on his chest. "She said I looked tired," he finally said. Mia laughed under her breath. "She's not wrong. I want to know her," he said. "Not just meet her. Know her, if you'll let me." Mia turned to face him fully. "I'm not here to punish you, Lucas," she said. "But this isn't about what you want. It's about her. If you want to be in her life, you need to be in it for her. Not for guilt, not for redemption." "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted. "She'll teach you," Mia said, "if you're willing to listen." They both looked at Sophie again. She had now built a tower of sugar packets and was pretending it was a castle. Lucas watched her, and something unfamiliar settled in his chest. Not fear, not shame, something gentler. Hope, fragile but real. He looked back at Mia. "I want to try." Mia held his gaze. Then slowly she nodded. "Then you start small," she said. "You come tomorrow, same time, and maybe we go to the park." Lucas breathed in like it was the first full breath he'd taken in years. "I'll be here." And this time, he meant it. The next morning, Lucas arrived early. He stood across the street from the hotel cafe, hands tucked in the pockets of his coat. heart thudding with a mix of anticipation and nerves. He had spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. It still felt surreal. The moment Sophie looked at him and asked, "Are you my daddy?" replayed in his head like a scene from someone else's life. Except it wasn't someone else's. It was his. And it wasn't just a moment. It was the beginning of something he never imagined, but now couldn't stop thinking about. The park Mia mentioned was only a few blocks away, nestled in the heart of the city like a quiet green island amid the chaos. By the time he crossed the street, Sophie was already outside, standing next to a small bench, bouncing on the balls of her feet. She wore a pink hoodie over her yellow dress and mismatched socks that made Lucas smile before he even reached her. She spotted him immediately. "You came back!" she shouted, beaming. Lucas knelt down to her level, overwhelmed by how easily her joy found him. "I said I would," he replied. "And I brought something." From inside his coat pocket, he pulled out a small, colorful box. "What is it?" Sophie asked, curious. "It's a puzzle," he said. "One with animals. I thought maybe we could do it together later. Or whenever you want." Sophie took it carefully, examining the picture on the front. "I like giraffes," she said. "They have long necks, like spaghetti." Lucas chuckled. "Then you'll love this one." Mia approached from behind, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Lucas without a word. Their eyes met briefly, hers still cautious but not closed. "Thanks for coming," she said. "You didn't have to bring anything." "I wanted to," Lucas replied. "I wasn't sure what else I could offer." "Presence is a good start," she said softly. They walked into the park together. It wasn't crowded. Just a few families, joggers, and people walking their dogs. Sophie led the way, skipping ahead, narrating her surroundings as if she were giving a guided tour. "That tree's the oldest. That squirrel lives there. That swing is creaky but the fastest." Lucas listened, absorbing every word like it was scripture. He didn't want to forget a single detail. When Sophie climbed onto a swing, Mia and Lucas sat on a nearby bench. The silence between them wasn't tense anymore, just full of all the things they hadn't said yet. "She's extraordinary," Lucas murmured. "She is," Mia agreed, watching her daughter. "She's everything to me." "I can see that." They sat for a while, watching Sophie swing back and forth, her hair catching the sunlight, her laughter ringing out like wind chimes. "I missed so much," Lucas said eventually. "You did," Mia said, not cruelly, just stating the truth. "I don't expect you to forgive me for that overnight," he continued, "and I don't expect Sophie to understand any of it. But I want to be part of her life now. For real." Mia turned to face him, eyes steady. "Then you have to show up. Not once. Not twice. Always. No disappearing acts. No silence. No empty promises." "I know," Lucas said. "I'm not that man anymore." "I hope so," she said. They spent the next hour helping Sophie gather sticks and leaves to build a tiny house for a squirrel she swore was her friend. Lucas crouched in the grass with her, letting her give him instructions like a bossy forewoman. He didn't care how ridiculous he looked. He was building something with her, even if it was made of twigs and bark. At one point, Sophie looked up and asked, "Can you come to my school sometime?" Lucas blinked. "If your mom says yes, I'd love to." "I'm drawing a picture of my family," she said. "It had just me and Mommy before, but I think I want to add you now." Lucas felt his throat close. He couldn't answer. He just nodded. When the sun began to dip lower in the sky and the shadows stretched longer across the grass, Mia gently said it was time to go. Sophie groaned but obeyed. As they headed back toward the street, Sophie slipped her hand into Lucas's without a word. He looked down at their intertwined fingers, then up at Mia. She didn't stop him. He walked them home. And when he turned to leave, Sophie ran back and hugged his waist tightly. "Will you come tomorrow?" she asked. Lucas crouched to her level again. "As long as you want me to," she smiled. "I want you to." And just like that, something shifted in him. Quiet, profound, irreversible. He had come to the park unsure if he belonged. He left knowing exactly where he was meant to be. Lucas returned the next day and the day after that. He didn't announce himself with grand gestures or extravagant gifts. No drivers, no bodyguards, no headlines. Just him, a man who had made mistakes. A man trying, step by step, to fix what couldn't be undone. not by erasing the past, but by building a future. For the first time in years, he wasn't acting as a CEO, a brand, or a symbol. He was simply a man trying to become a father. Over the following week, his visits became part of an unspoken rhythm. Sometimes he met them in the park. Other days, Mia let him walk Sophie home from school, letting them take the long route past the bookstore where Sophie liked to stare at picture books through the window. Once, on a drizzly afternoon, Lucas arrived at Mia's apartment with a plastic bag full of art supplies and an umbrella big enough for three. He had no idea how to entertain a 5-year-old indoors, but Sophie did. She made him sit on the floor for 2 hours while they painted paper plates and turned them into animal masks. He wore the giraffe. She insisted. Lucas had never laughed so much doing something so completely unproductive, and he'd never felt so useful. That evening, Mia served a simple dinner. Pasta, salad, a loaf of bread. Sophie fell asleep before dessert, curled up on the couch with one of her plush animals, her cheeks streaked faintly with watercolor paint. Lucas stood in the doorway of the living room, watching her sleep. "She's trusting you faster than I expected," Mia said quietly from the kitchen. Lucas turned toward her. "She's giving me more than I deserve." "You don't get to decide that," Mia said. "She does." He walked into the kitchen and leaned against the counter, watching her as she poured tea. Her hair was loose for once, falling over her shoulders. Her green sweater matched her eyes. "Do you hate me?" he asked suddenly. Mia looked up, surprised. "No. Even after I disappeared? After I didn't answer your message?" She paused, considering. "I was angry for a long time, but I couldn't stay angry. It wasn't healthy, and it wouldn't help Sophie. So I let it go. I focused on being her mom, on keeping things simple, safe." Lucas looked down at his hands. "You did that. You built something real." Mia studied him for a moment. "Why are you really here, Lucas?" He met her eyes. "Because I don't want to miss another day. Because she looked at me like I mattered. And I don't know the last time someone looked at me like that." Mia didn't reply immediately. She placed a mug in front of him, then sat across the table. "You can be in her life," she said finally. "But if this is going to work, really work, you have to understand something. This isn't about erasing the past. You can't. You missed her first word, her first steps, her first day of preschool. You weren't there when she had her fever at 2 in the morning, or when she cried because her best friend moved away. That's the truth." "I know," he said, voice quiet. "But," Mia continued, "you can be here now, and tomorrow, and the next day. And if you stay long enough, if you show up without needing thanks, she'll give you something back." "What?" he asked. "Forgiveness, belonging, love." Lucas felt the weight of her words settle over him like a heavy coat. Not suffocating, but grounding. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. Mia gave a faint smile. "Then start showing her what that means." Over the next few days, Lucas did just that. He helped Sophie with her alphabet practice, even though she insisted on inventing new letters. He read her the same bedtime story 3 times in a row because she wanted to memorize it. He took her to the zoo and didn't flinch when she called out the names of every animal, loudly and in the wrong direction. He listened when she talked. He answered when she asked. He stayed when she needed, and slowly the gap between them began to close. One evening, as he tucked her in and turned off the light, Sophie whispered into the dark, "Are you going to be here tomorrow?" Lucas squeezed her hand gently. "Yes, every day you want me." She nodded sleepily, then murmured, "I think I want that every day." As he walked out of the room, Lucas found Mia standing in the hallway, watching. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes were no longer guarded. And in that moment, Lucas knew something had changed. Not just with Sophie, but with her too. By the time 2 weeks had passed, Lucas no longer needed directions. He knew the path to Mia's apartment building by heart, the rhythm of the subway stop nearby, the smell of the bakery 2 blocks away that always had cinnamon rolls in the morning, the uneven step just before the front entrance. These details, small and ordinary, became sacred to him. Every walk to their door felt like walking into something that mattered. On Monday afternoon, Lucas offered to pick Sophie up from school. Mia had hesitated at first, but after a few long conversations and a look in Sophie's eyes when Lucas arrived with his usual quiet smile and warm patience, she agreed. He stood in the small courtyard of the school, heart thudding as children poured out the doors in colorful coats and backpacks bouncing against their sides. Parents waved, teachers called out goodbyes, and Lucas stood with his hands in his coat pockets, scanning for one particular yellow backpack. Then he saw her. Sophie ran out of the building like a comet, her dark hair flying behind her. The moment her eyes landed on him, she grinned so wide it stopped time. "You came!" she shouted, barreling toward him. Lucas crouched to catch her in his arms. "I always will," he said, breathless not from the hug, but from how much it meant. She pulled back and immediately began chatting. "I got a sticker for being quiet in line, and I drew a dog, but it looked like a potato, and my friend Layla gave me a grape, but it was weird and mushy and—" "Whoa," Lucas laughed. "Slow down. Should I take notes?" She took his hand instead. "Come on. I want to go the long way home." He didn't ask why. He simply followed. They walked past a row of small shops, stopping to press their noses to the toy store window. Sophie explained the names of every stuffed animal on display, inventing elaborate backstories with such seriousness that Lucas didn't dare interrupt. She made him promise, under imaginary contract, that one day they would adopt the yellow plush dragon on the top shelf. He agreed solemnly. When they reached Mia's building, Sophie insisted they stop at the corner for ice cream. Despite the chill in the air, Lucas let her choose a flavor. Strawberry with rainbow sprinkles. He got plain chocolate. "You always get boring ones," Sophie teased. "Consistency is important," he replied, and she giggled. Upstairs, Mia opened the door before they even knocked. She took one look at the ice cream and raised a brow. "Dinner's going to be a struggle." "We made a deal," Lucas said. "She finishes the broccoli, I surrender the sprinkles." Mia smirked. "Smart man." That night, Lucas stayed for dinner. He helped set the table, passing napkins to Sophie while she sang softly under her breath. Mia moved around the kitchen with natural ease, her ponytail swaying gently as she stirred sauce and checked the oven timer. Watching her felt grounding, comforting, familiar in a way that unsettled him with how much he'd missed it. Over dinner, they told stories, silly ones from Sophie's school, and one particularly disastrous cooking memory from Lucas's childhood involving a microwave, 2 eggs, and a fire extinguisher. Sophie was still giggling when Mia sent her off to brush her teeth. Lucas sat on the couch sipping tea when Mia returned with her arms crossed and a smile tugging at her lips. "She said you read better than me," she said. Lucas looked mock offended. "I did the voices." "She says she wants you to be at parent night. It's next Thursday." He blinked. "Parent night?" "She didn't ask," Mia said. "She told." Lucas nodded slowly. "Then I'll be there." Mia sat beside him. Not too close, not too far. They sat in the soft light of the living room, silence folding gently around them. "I've been thinking," she said eventually. "I never wanted to shut you out. I just didn't know if letting you in would open everything again. And I was scared." He looked at her. "I was scared too," he said, "but not of being a dad. I think I was scared of being needed and failing at it." "You're not failing," she said softly. Her words landed with more weight than she probably intended. Lucas felt something inside him loosen, something he hadn't known was still clenched. "Thank you," he said. They didn't kiss. They didn't touch. But in that moment, something passed between them. Deeper than attraction, quieter than romance. Trust. Later, as he said goodnight and pulled on his coat, Sophie ran out of her room barefoot. She threw her arms around his waist and whispered, "I'm glad you're my dad." He froze and then knelt down, wrapping her in his arms. "I'm glad too," he whispered back. "More than you know." That night, Lucas walked home through the city with a full heart and tear-stung eyes, knowing one truth more clearly than anything else. This was no longer about showing up. It was about staying. By the time autumn began to paint the city in warm oranges and golds, Lucas had become a familiar figure in Sophie's world. The mornings were cooler now, and leaves crunched under their feet during walks to school. There was something comforting about the season's change, something that reflected the quiet transformation in Lucas himself. He no longer felt like a visitor orbiting around Mia and Sophie's lives. He felt like part of their gravity. One Saturday morning, Lucas arrived at their apartment carrying a large paper bag and a nervous smile. Inside was a surprise. A small baking kit, complete with kid-sized aprons, cookie cutters, and all the ingredients for homemade chocolate chip cookies. Sophie squealed when she saw it. "I get to be the head chef," she announced, pulling on the apron with great ceremony. "Yes, ma'am," Lucas said, saluting her. Mia, watching from the kitchen doorway, with a mug of tea in her hands, just shook her head and smiled. "You realize you're voluntarily inviting chaos into my kitchen? I've been to board meetings with billionaires and no snacks. I can handle flour," Lucas said confidently. As it turned out, he couldn't. 30 minutes in, there was flour on the ceiling, sugar in Sophie's hair, and Mia's dish towels were being used as superhero capes. But in the middle of the mess, there was laughter. Real, full-bellied, no-holding-back laughter. Sophie grinned up at him with a smear of dough on her cheek and said, "This is the best day ever." Lucas paused, watching her. That one sentence felt heavier than it should have. He wondered how many times she'd said it before, and whether he'd ever been a reason for it. After the cookies were safely in the oven, Mia joined them on the couch with warm plates and 3 tall glasses of milk. They sat together, eating in comfortable silence. Sophie dipped her cookie into her milk with great care, then looked up at Lucas. "Do you remember when we met in the hotel?" she asked suddenly. Lucas nodded slowly. "Of course I do. I didn't really think you were my dad," she said. "Not at first." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "No?" She shook her head. "But you look like the kind of man who should be someone's dad. So I decided to ask." Mia smiled into her glass. Lucas's heart twisted a little. "And now?" Sophie leaned against his arm. "Now I know you are." He didn't speak. He couldn't. Later, when Sophie went to her room to draw, her current project was a book called The Girl Who Brought Back the Moon. Lucas stayed behind with Mia. They washed the dishes together, bumping elbows now and then, sharing quiet glances that neither of them tried to define. "She's happier," Mia said after a while. "I can see that," Lucas replied. "You've brought something steady to her life, something I couldn't give her by myself, no matter how hard I tried." "You gave her everything," he said. "I'm just adding to what you built." Mia dried her hands and turned to him, more serious now. "Have you thought about what this means long-term?" Lucas met her eyes. "Every day." "And?" "I'm not leaving," he said. "I want to be here. I want her to grow up knowing I'll be at every school night, every dentist appointment, every weird little science fair." "And what about me?" she asked, voice quiet. Lucas hesitated. "What about you? You disappeared once, not just from her, from me, from us. If there's an us again, I need to know you won't vanish the moment things get complicated." He stepped closer. "I was afraid of intimacy then, afraid of roots, afraid of needing anyone. But not now. I've already needed you more than I can admit, and I've missed 6 years of something I never even gave myself the chance to know." Mia searched his face for any sign of doubt. She didn't find it. "I still love you, Mia," Lucas said. "I think I never stopped. I just didn't know how to hold it, or how to hold you." She didn't answer right away, but she didn't walk away either. That evening, as Lucas helped Sophie pack her school bag for Monday, she handed him a small envelope. "For you," she said shyly, "but don't open it until you get home." He tucked it into his jacket pocket and kissed the top of her head. When he got home later, alone in his apartment, he sat in his living room and opened the envelope. Inside was a drawing, 3 stick figures, one small girl in yellow, one woman in green, one man in blue. Above them, in bright purple crayon, was a single sentence written in wobbly handwriting: "Now we are a family." Lucas closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he felt whole. The following week began with a calm that Lucas had never quite known before. It wasn't the silence of solitude or the hush of luxury. It was the warm, domestic kind of calm, the kind that came with routine, with knowing someone was waiting for you, with hearing a child laugh while brushing her teeth and a woman humming in the kitchen without realizing it. It was subtle, but it was everything. Lucas had stopped returning to his penthouse every night. He still kept the place, of course, but he didn't need the view or the square footage. What he needed was breakfast with Sophie, even if she only ate 2 spoonfuls before claiming she was full, then asking for cookies 10 minutes later. He needed the mess, the questions, the tiny shoes in the hallway. He needed them. On Thursday morning, Lucas surprised Sophie with a new lunchbox. Her old one had a broken zipper, and he had spent nearly an hour trying to fix it, before finally admitting defeat and walking into a store to find the exact one she'd pointed to weeks ago. When he handed it to her before school, her eyes lit up. "It's got bunnies," she gasped, "and glitter, and it's not pink. It's space pink." "I wasn't aware that was a color," Lucas said, amused. "It's a real thing. Only cool people know," she said solemnly, hugging it to her chest. Mia watched the exchange from the doorway, her expression unreadable but soft. She hadn't said much the past few days about their conversation in the kitchen, but Lucas could feel it shifting. Her guard wasn't gone, but it had lowered. That afternoon, Mia called him while he was in a meeting. He stepped out the moment he saw her name on the screen. "Everything okay?" he asked. There was a pause. "Yeah," she said. I was wondering if you could come over tonight. Not for Sophie, for me." Lucas didn't hesitate. "Of course." That evening when he arrived, the apartment smelled like roasted garlic and fresh herbs. Mia had cooked. It wasn't fancy, but it was intentional. He helped her set the table. Sophie was spending the night with a friend, her very first sleepover, something that had left Mia both nervous and proud. They sat down to dinner, and for the first time since Lisbon, it was just the two of them. No child, no distractions, just history and the possibility of a future. They talked about everything, about the night they'd shared all those years ago, how brief it had been, and how meaningful, about the life Mia had built since, and the mistakes Lucas had made while chasing an empire, about their fears, their regrets, and the ache of what-ifs. And then Mia said, "I loved you." Back then. "I didn't know what it meant at the time, but I did." Lucas swallowed. "I loved you too, and I was terrified of that." She looked at him, eyes steady. "I'm still afraid," she said, "but not of loving you. I'm afraid of needing you, of Sophie needing you, and something taking you away again." He didn't answer with words. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small object, a key. "To the place I don't go back to anymore," he said. "I don't need it. I've already moved in here, even if my things haven't yet. Every day I walk through your door, it feels like home, and I want that to be real. For Sophie, for you, for me." Mia took the key, her fingers brushing his. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. Instead, she stepped forward and hugged him, tightly, and Lucas held her like he'd been waiting a lifetime for it. Later that night, they sat on the couch together, not speaking, just leaning on each other, watching the city lights through the window. Lucas looked down at her and whispered, "I'm not afraid anymore." Mia's hand found his. "Then let's stop being afraid together," she said. When Sophie returned the next morning, tired and sticky with marshmallow from the sleepover, she ran into Lucas's arms like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You were here," she said. "I told you I would be," he replied. Mia stood behind them, watching the man who had once been a ghost become the person her daughter ran to first. She smiled, and Lucas smiled back, silently promising her, "I'm here. I'm staying." Winter came softly that year, slipping in on quiet winds and early dusks. The city transformed, windows filled with glowing lights, scarves bundled around strangers' necks, and storefronts playing holiday music that faded into the background of street traffic. For Lucas, the season brought something he had never really known before: peace. The transformation wasn't sudden, but undeniable. He had fully moved into Mia's apartment by December, though his belongings trickled in slowly. A favorite mug here, a soft scarf Sophie insisted he keep on the coat rack, a worn leather journal now resting on the bookshelf beside Sophie's bedtime. Story collection. His penthouse stood empty now, high above the skyline, perfectly furnished and completely hollow. This, the chaos of mismatched socks, cereal spilled under the table, Mia's perfume lingering in the hallway. This was where he lived. Sophie began calling him Dad more often now, without a pause or second glance. Sometimes Daddy, sometimes Lucas Daddy, when she was being playful. Each time it hit him in a new way, not because he was surprised anymore, but because it never stopped feeling like a gift. In early December, Mia received a formal invitation from Sophie's school. They were hosting a Winter Wishes Night. It's an evening where each child would come on stage, dressed in a sparkly sweater or a handmade costume, and share a single wish aloud in front of their parents and peers. She's been nervous about it for days, Mia whispered as they walked into the school's auditorium together. Lucas carried a paper bag filled with snacks and a backup pair of mittens, just in case. She's written 5 different wishes already. What's the final version? He asked. She wouldn't tell me, Mia said, shaking her head with a small laugh. She says I'll hear it when everyone else does. The auditorium was full of excited chatter and the rustling of folding chairs. Lucas and Mia sat near the middle, hands touching on the seat between them. The lights dimmed. A teacher welcomed the crowd. And then one by one, children began to walk onto the stage. Some wishes were silly. I wish I had a dragon. I wish candy grew on trees. Some were sweet. I wish my grandma could visit from Mexico. I wish my dog could talk. The parents clapped, some wiping away quiet tears. Then it was Sophie's turn. She stepped onto the stage in her bright yellow dress, the same one she wore the first day Lucas met her, with sparkly boots and a paper snowflake crown. She held the microphone carefully, standing on her tiptoes. She glanced out into the crowd until her eyes found Lucas and Mia. She smiled, confident now. My name is Sophie, she said clearly, and my wish already came true. There was a pause in the room. I used to only have one person to hug at bedtime, but now I have 2. I used to wonder if someone I didn't know could love me, and now I don't wonder anymore. Lucas's throat tightened. My wish was for a dad, she finished, and now I have one. She bowed, a big exaggerated bow, and the audience erupted into soft applause. Lucas clapped until his hands hurt, blinking away the tears that blurred his view. Mia leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. You okay? She whispered. I don't think I've ever been this okay in my entire life, he replied. That night back at home, the 3 of them sat in the living room in pajamas, drinking cocoa with way too many marshmallows. Sophie insisted they build a pillow fort, and Lucas didn't hesitate. They stacked chairs, blankets, cushions. He accidentally knocked over a lamp. Mia pretended to be annoyed, but she couldn't stop smiling. Inside the makeshift fort, Sophie lay between them, holding both of their hands. You know what I think? She said sleepily. What's that, baby? Mia asked. I think we're magic, Sophie mumbled. Lucas kissed the top of her head. You're the most magical thing that's ever happened to me. She was asleep before he finished the sentence. Later, after they tucked her into bed, Mia and Lucas stood by the window, watching snow begin to fall. Light and slow, like the world was exhaling. Lucas looked at her. I was so close to never knowing any of this. But you do now, Mia said, and I won't waste another second. She smiled at him, leaning into his side. In that quiet room filled with love and warmth and the gentle breath of a child dreaming in the next room, Lucas Crawford, once a man surrounded by success and completely alone, had everything he never knew he needed. And this time, he wasn't letting go. What makes the ending of this story powerful, to me, isn't that everything becomes perfect. It's that everything becomes real. Lucas doesn't get a neat resolution. He doesn't erase the lost time or undo the silence of the years he missed, but he learns how to do the hardest thing of all: stay. In so many stories, transformation is loud. It's dramatic, public, full of sweeping gestures. But here, change happens in quiet moments. Helping with homework, showing up to a school event, reading the same bedtime story for the 3rd night in a row. That's what love looks like in the real world. That's what redemption looks like. Sophie's wish coming true wasn't magic. It was consistency, presence, vulnerability. And Mia's forgiveness wasn't instant, but it was honest. She didn't need Lucas to be perfect. She needed him to be there. And when he finally was, fully, wholeheartedly, the family she had built around love and survival grew into something complete. I hope this ending reminds us that it's never too late to show up for the people we love, and that sometimes the most extraordinary chapters of our lives begin with just showing up and saying, I'm here.